From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MVW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
And broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Friday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. Chase Parham, Neal McCready. I'm in the Clark Ford studio this morning. We've got some more interviews coming your way today. We're going to talk to Brett Norsworthy. You all know him from Memphis radio waves and also pre and post game for Ole Miss football as well. We're going to speak to Olin Buchanan about Texas A&M, Josh Kendall about South Carolina, kind of wrapping up our media days portion of the podcast this week as we've relied on a few of those. Hopefully you checked in yesterday when we talked to Mike Griffith, John Adams, and Tommy Dees looking at Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama yesterday. And we'll keep going with that today as well. Neal joins me as we knock out a segment before we get to those interviews on the podcast brought to you every single day by the Oxford Exxon Highway 6 West in Oxford. And might be a good day for a daiquiri. It looks like the Weather Service calling for some heat index up around 105, 107 this afternoon. Good time to just stop in, spend $3, get a daiquiri, a lot of different flavors there with the Oxford Exxon. And while you're there, you can save money on the pump with the Speed Pass Plus app, the mobile rewards program, and more. And then obviously, hopefully you're driving a Clark Ford to the gas station.
Yeah, you should be. I drove a Clark Ford all the way to Chicago yesterday. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi, 662-257-1900. Call the number, ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford you are looking for, and he'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. It's that simple. It's right to the bottom line. There's no hassle. There's no haggle. Corey wants to be your car guy. He wants to be your truck guy. He'll prove that to you when you make the call. It's as simple as that. I get asked all the time, what does that mean? Call. You'll find out. At the very least, you're going to get a baseline moving forward for your car purchase. At the more likely, you're going to end up doing what I've done 3 times, and that's get into a Clark Ford from the people at Clark Ford. Great service after the sale, all that stuff. 662-257-1900.
So let's see. We got a couple different things today. Tom Mars, NCAA investigator now. As the world turns, I guess you will. Here's one thing I'll say, and again, we credited Fordy with whatever it was he covered a couple weeks ago that nobody else touched. It's all running together now. I don't even remember. But in the tweet last night, sorry, I'm laughing at myself. In the tweet last night, he puts "Y sources, and I thought, okay, the two sides are Tom Mars and the NCAA. I've never felt better about an anonymous report in the history of the world. I'm 100% sure that bad boy's correct. I'm good.
Yeah, there's no chance where I go #fake news.
Yeah, no. Ironclad.
No. Yeah.
The best part of this whole deal is in the third paragraph. It goes, both Mars and an NCAA spokesperson declined comment to Yahoo on Thursday.
That's where he had the conversation where he goes, and look, every reporter's had this conversation. I'm not making fun of Pat. I actually had a nice conversation with Pat in Hoover. But so they had an on the record conversation, and then they had an off-the-record conversation. Yeah. The off-the-record conversation, he got everything. In the on-the-record conversation, he said to him, can you comment on this report? And he said, no, I can't comment.
Yeah.
It's just silly, but it's journalism and whatever.
So he's going to be an investigator with the NCAA's new complex case unit. The complex case unit, which is scheduled to come into being next month, was a recommended reform by Condoleezza Rice's led Commission on College Basketball last year. The group is expected to be comprised of a combination of external investigators and members of the NCAA enforcement staff, that is tasked to handle the more complicated and large-scale investigations of potential NCAA rules violations. The CCU's first cases could well be related to the investigation of corruption in college basketball, which started with a federal probe and has since transitioned into an NCAA undertaking.
I don't even know where to start. There are people that said, "Oh, I saw this coming." I'll be honest, I never saw this coming. I never saw Tom Mars joining the NCAA investigative unit. I never did. I think you did. And kudos to you. You are clearly smarter than me. I did not see this coming. Let me kind of correct myself. I got to correct my own grammar. Kudos to you. You are clearly smarter than I.
Well, here's the thing. The only reason why it surprises me, and now maybe he's just coming in at times, like, is this completely his 100% job? Because what surprises me is, wouldn't this be a pay cut?
I don't know.
I'm just kind of guessing, but that's the part that would just off the cuff surprise me.
What are they paying him?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is what's the law business like in Little Rock these days? Has his reputation been harmed?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know any of these things. It's good news for Pat. He's got a new source inside the NCAA.
Oh, I didn't think about that. So you're gonna hear Mars's name on every one of these, what we would term NCAA investigations, because we're never going to be talking about the Harvard crew team getting in trouble or something like that. Every one of the main ones, Tom Mars involved now.
Yeah. Tom Mars has already shown favoritism to certain schools.
You got to give him credit for being an opportunist, if nothing else.
You know my feelings on the NCAA. There's no point in me dragging that into this Friday episode of the Oxford Exxon podcast. So I think they're a joke. I think the NCAA investigative people are a joke. I ran into one of them in Atlanta back years ago before this thing got going. I've told this story. You were the first person I called, and I said, Ole Miss is in trouble. And you were like, why? And I told you about it. And by the end, you were like, oh, God, they are going to get – we used a word we shouldn't have used. So I'll leave it there. And they did. They did get that word. They absolutely got that word. And it was an agenda. It was people's feelings were hurt. So I think the organization is flawed. I'm glad that you all love college athletics. I hope you continue to love them at least for another, 20 years or so. And then after that, you're on your own. But what is needed in college, I heard Jay Billis talking about this the other day, and he's right. What is needed is common sense reform. What is coming is the absolute opposite of common sense reform. The NCAA is absolutely digging in and doubling down. There is absolutely no interest on their part of doing the right thing. They are going to continue to protect the cash cows, and they're going to try to send examples through other schools. And if you're a school like NC State or Ole Miss or maybe even Auburn basketball, Auburn basketball is not supposed to do what Auburn basketball did. And now the NCAA is saying, hey, we're going to have to investigate.
The NCAA loves its tiers, loves putting everybody in a box, and it wants you to stay in that box. They're all about that.
It certainly appears to be the case. I mean, they're not digging into Kentucky. They're not digging into Kansas. They're not digging into Duke, but they're going to dig into Auburn.
Worried about Mark Gottfried.
Worried about Mark Gottfried, who's out of the game. Out of the game. They're going to dig into Auburn because they don't like Bruce Pearl. And they're going to dig into Auburn because Auburn's not supposed to go to the Final Four and get a bucket away from the title game. That's not what Auburn's supposed to do.
Well, you weren't on the show yesterday. I was talking to Jeffrey. Mark Gottfried the NCAA in writing says you're getting too good of players and you should have looked into it more because NC State doesn't get those players. That's what they said.
Yes. Listen, at the risk of upsetting the apple cart here, I've talked to someone at Ole Miss who said, basically, I'm trying to protect my people here. Basically, that Ole Miss would have been fine until it signed Tunsil. And when it signed Tunsil, remember when I used to tell you that where they blew it, and they never had hand-raised guy in the room to go, hey, if we're going to sign this kid, we've got to make it obvious that we offered him the 4 scholarships we offered him. We can't let this sit out there. And
which is asinine that it's true, but it's reality nonetheless.
But it's reality nonetheless. They needed Alex Weber, his half brother, to announce right there that day at that press conference, hey, I'm going to Ole Miss too, because everyone would have gone, wait a minute. You're like the 8th string wide receiver on this team. You're not. No one has offered you, not even like the community colleges nearby. Oh, that's why Laramie's going. But that would have been an ego blow to Freeze. And look, is it sad that it's this way? Of course. But you know the rest of that story. It is what it is. And so the fact that when Ole Miss got Tunsil and Freeze doubled down with stuff and all that, they were okay on Robert Kimdichie. Everybody could say, well, I got it because of his brother. They were probably okay on Treadwell. I mean, I drove through Crete, Illinois yesterday briefly, passed right by the exit that I took to cover his commitment ceremony. And, Crete, Illinois, 35 minutes south of Chicago, is not anybody's territory. So they could have gotten away with that. They could have obviously gotten away with Antonio Connor. He's from Batesville. He's from South Panola. That's kind of, at least back then, was kind of a pipeline for Ole Miss. I'm sure people were grumbling and stuff, but they could have gotten away with it. It was Laramie Tunsil that sent it over the edge, because that was a guy that, in the eyes of the NCAA, Ole Miss shouldn't have gotten him.
Which is another irony, too, because he mentioned Ole Miss from the very, very beginning, all the way through.
He did. I mean, we could rehash this.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Tunsil's a book at this point.
Yeah, Tunsil is absolutely a book. And the mistake that Ole Miss made, frankly, and they shouldn't have paid for it the way that they did, but the mistake that they made was they tried to keep it so damned private instead of letting that kid talk a lot more, or encouraging that kid to talk a lot more and to mention Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was part, at that time especially, that was part of the problem with some of this, is that Ole Miss kept everything so buttoned up that outside of just like us and people who are around it every single day, nobody hears these names. So then when they sign, it's like, well, where'd that come from? It's like, well, actually, they've been around for 2 years. You just didn't hear it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I'm not going to get into a rip Hugh Freeze thing, because Hugh does a lot of good things. The one thing consistently that he has done poorly is media relations, public relations, sort of understanding how stuff works. And now let me say this. It's my understanding that there were people around him who told him these very things, and he did not listen. His mistake has always been he thinks he's the smartest PR guy in the room.
It's Liberty, so it doesn't really matter, but why did he put a recruiting photo up last night wearing an Ole Miss hat? Did you see this?
Oh, I didn't see that.
He put one of his Yahtzee fish things up because I guess Liberty got a commit last night, and he was wearing an Ole Miss hat in the photo.
There's a book there too. There's a psychology book with Hugh Freeze that would be fascinating.
Okay, I figured.
Don't get me wrong, we're all crazy, but there's a lot there.
Okay.
Hey Chase, we talked about this when it first rolled out, but I want to remind you and our listeners about Blue Delta's awesome new offering. It's the Pappy Package. You'll like this, being the bourbon connoisseur that you have become. Get a few close friends together to celebrate an anniversary or a company milestone. Blue Delta will come set up and bring a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle with them, a minimum order of 15 jeans, and you will get a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle 15-year aged bourbon to accompany a private group fitting at your location, however intimate you choose. For more details or to schedule a time for the team from Blue Delta to come get you measured and bring the libations, email info It's INFO at bluedeltajeans.com.
I sent you the photo.
All right. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That is an Ole Miss hat.
That is an Ole Miss cap. Yes, that is correct.
Why?
I don't know. He put that up 23 hours ago with a Liberty hashtag.
Go Flames. Beats me.
Okay.
I mean, I got nothing.
I know you were out of town. Did you? I was told to ask this. Did you watch the Fantasy Suite episode of The Bachelor?
I did. I watched it on Monday night in my room in Birmingham.
I mean, Kat's still
Look,
coming back next week, so whatever.
Yeah, he's going to come back. And I don't think she's going to pick him based on their Twitter interaction Monday night, Tuesday morning that I am ashamed to have said that I read.
Oh, there was a Twitter reaction?
But,
I didn't see this.
Yeah, he's deeply religious. One of those people who...
I didn't realize this as I was watching earlier in the show.
And
Did we
I always
know this
hate
the whole
to
time?
do this because people think... Yeah.
Okay, got it.
He's one of the people who, and I'm not criticizing these people. I'm not anything. Please don't send me those emails today. And it's all good. When he was younger, he got around apparently a good bit. And he claims that he was in the shower and that he had a religious experience where he went the polar opposite of that direction. And he is saving himself for marriage, which is fine. And that's a big deal with him. And apparently that is quite the attractive thing to the people at The Bachelor. They like this storyline. And so she is on the fantasy suite portion of the show. And apparently she and one of the other finalists
Had engaged.
consummated their feelings for one another. Not only once, but twice. It happened in a windmill, which is another story entirely, I suppose. And there might even been another one of the finalists that she has become intimate with. In fact, I think that's a safe assumption at this point. And he asked her about it and kind of gave her a morality speech that she clearly, you could watch her, she was feeling quite uncomfortable as it occurred. And when she revealed to him that she had indeed been with other men on the show, he got really upset. She sent him home and the whole deal. It's just, I think it's safe to say that this show is going to end like the overwhelming majority of most Bachelor shows, where one of the finalists is going to become the next Bachelor. Another of the finalists is going to have his heart broken and he's going to somehow get over it. And she is going to end up every bit as single as she was before this started, which in my opinion was her plan all along.
Yeah, you don't think she's even here for it at all?
No, I think she's here because she's an attractive girl with a lot of personality, and she's kind of funny, and she seems to be pretty bright. There's a lot there, and I think she's trying to become a star. And if you ask me if she pulled it off, I'll say that she probably gets close. More people know who Hannah Brown is today than they did a year ago, and so she's got a chance to be a TV person or whatever it is that she ultimately decides she wants to be. And no, I don't think she was there truly, quote, looking for a husband. But come on, whatever that means.
Yeah, we're gonna go to Brett Norsworthy in a couple minutes. Before we do that, though, give me your take. Top Gun 2 trailer out yesterday, 2020.
It's been sent to me. I haven't had a chance to watch it in large part because I've watched it. I haven't watched it. I was driving when Hogan sent it to us.
Okay.
And then last night I was going to watch it. Laura sent it to me and she goes, "You need to watch this." But I was too busy watching the Aaron Boone thing over and over and over because it's the best manager rant I've ever seen. It was fantastic.
You couldn't give Maverick 3 minutes of your time and just pause Aaron Boone for a second.
I intended to, and I will today. I will. Everyone tells me that it's fantastic, and I've got to see it, and it's nostalgic. And
it's very high on the nostalgia. That is correct. That's the word.
Yeah.
Which is the point here. Don't take us from our world. Just keep giving us more of our world. Don't screw this up.
Yeah.
I don't need a reboot.
Don't bring new Coke. Just keep Coca-Cola the way it is.
Yeah. I want my same characters. I want them 30 years older. They can be fat. I don't care. I just want my same characters. That's what I want.
Along the 30-year older thing, I'm already weary of the Face app stuff. I'm about to mute that from all of my social media.
Yeah, I refuse. I do give some credit to the technology behind the app because they at least they do look legitimately possible in a lot of instances.
Yeah, it makes you really want to fight Father Time.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I got nostalgic yesterday. I saw a bunch of some of the Bears throwback jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
Man, those are sweet.
You're all in.
I'm a lifetime fan, man. I've been cheering for them, like Bears, Tottenham Hotspur. I've been a fan all my life.
I mean, you were probably crushed in '85 when the Dolphins beat them and screwed up the undefeated season.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten over that one yet. Really.
You know, Top Gun only has a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 55.
Really?
55.
Why?
I don't know.
It's a great movie. See, it's one of those movies where people, the hardcore say, well, that's not how fighting works. That's not. Yeah, I don't care. Just entertain me.
And, and to get a positive rating, it's not like you had to rate it 100. It's only got to be a 60 to be a yes. So 45% didn't give it a 60. 45% of the critics failed the movie.
I just don't see how that's possible. There's no part of that movie that was not entertaining. When you walked out of the theater after you went to see Top Gun, you were entertained. Those were 2 hours of your life that you didn't want back. You were pleased. You dropped $4.50 or whatever it was to buy a movie ticket that day, and you didn't ever think about asking for your money back. You were in. That was good.
Because TV has gotten
maybe it wasn't.
Go ahead.
Maybe it wasn't realistic. Maybe it wasn't technically accurate. Maybe some of the. I don't care.
Yeah. They did play volleyball in blue jeans. That was probably worth taking a few points off. I'll give them credit there. Because TV has gotten so critical now, because not to get on soapboxes or anything, but just attention spans are so low. Do we have movie stars anymore, or is Tom Cruise the last movie star?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, will there ever be another Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise?
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford, that's a great one. My guess is no.
Or at least not in that iteration.
Who was the actress in Sleepless in Seattle? Meg Ryan. Will there ever be another Meg Ryan? Will there ever be another Meg Ryan? She was kind of in everything,
Yeah.
My guess Roberts. Julia Roberts, that's a better example. My guess is no.
I don't know. Probably a conversation for next Friday when we're just trying to fill up time and we have nothing going on. But just tease that a little. Think about it, because I don't know. That era, in a lot of ways, is kind of over.
Oh, I think it's completely over.
I was listening to the Rewatchables, that Bill Simmons podcast that goes back and looks at old movies, and they were doing When Harry Met Sally this week, and it's 30 years since When Harry Met Sally came out this summer, and they were discussing kind of the birth of rom-com with the movie, but they were also, discussing Meg Ryan and her role and just kind of talking about, kind of superstar movie stars and that kind of thing and how the world's changed a little bit. So that's where I got the idea from. But anyway. Okay. Well, anyway. What?
Oh, just this. The Aaron Boone stuff about being a savage in that box and some of the stuff that,
If you haven't watched it, it's worth the Google. Get the kids out of the room and turn it on. I'm not going to play it on the podcast, but yes.
I was driving north yesterday, and we were almost to Chicago, and Carson was watching a movie in the back on his iPad with his headphones on. I like driving and listening to random Major League Baseball games. I'm a weird person, I know. And I had listened to Dodgers Phillies, and I flipped to Yankees Rays, and I heard the whole thing happening, not the mics, but they were describing Aaron Boone getting ejected and Brett Gardner banging the top of the dugout. And you could tell they had heard more than what we had heard, and they were trying to sort of describe it to us. And it was, and then I was curious, and then when we got here, the video was already viral, and I watched it. It was awesome having listened to it live, and then that's fantastic because they said he's giving that umpire an earful, and then later you actually hear what he actually said. It's classic. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, Google it if you wish. We're gonna jump into interviews in a second. We're gonna get those the rest of the show today. We're gonna lead it off with Brett Norsworthy. So enjoy, and we'll talk to you at least with our part on Monday. Take a quick break here and tell you about Community Mortgage. We told you for a couple every weeks now that interest rates are as low as they've been in about the last 2 years. Maybe it's time to refinance. Maybe it's time to purchase. Just get a look at what Jason can do for you if you're one of their four areas: Oxford, Memphis, Soto County, or Chattanooga. You can find him at 662-234-2704 or JLOWE@communitymtg.com.
The podcast is also brought to you by our friends at Dead Soxy. Again, go to deadsoxy.com, enter the promo code Rebel Grove at checkout. You get 30% off all orders, including the sale items, including the no-shows, which would feel really good right about now. Deadsoxy.com, promo code Rebel Grove, get 30% off all orders. You don't want to miss 1 minute of the action at the Vault this season. Ole Miss football arrives this September. September the 7th, I think, it's the opener against Arkansas, the home opener. Reserve your season tickets with the new 2019 season ticket pricing for just $299. For more information, visit OleMissTix.com. Podcast also brought to you by Pinnacle Trust based in Madison, Mississippi. They provide detailed, specialized investment management, financial planning, retirement planning for individuals and businesses, and much more. They also have the Pinnacle Trust 401k advisory services. If your company is not particularly happy with the 401k plan that you have set up, it's not performing the way that you want it to perform, it's a headache, get in touch with the people at Pinnacle Trust. They're Pinnacle Trust retirement plan advisory team. They specialize in a lot of different plans, 401k plans, 403b plans, whatever you might need. That initial consultation is free. It's pintrust.com, PINN trust.com. Podcast also brought to you by the Westin Jackson, home to Soul Spa, the ultimate luxury spa experience in downtown Jackson, and also Estelle Wine Bar and Bistro, where you can get a creative craft cocktail, enjoy the curated wine list, and enjoy Chef Caden's many fantastic offerings there at Estelle Wine Bar and Bistro. Podcast also brought to you by John Edwards, Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. A lot of you have used John. You've gone to him. He's part of Virtuoso. And you've gone to him and said, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. I've got some ideas. I've got a budget. Here's my budget. Now, what can you do? And so far, John's turned around a lot of trips. A 30th anniversary trip to Italy, Venice, Lake Como, Florence, Rome, a fall trip to Greenbrier, a trip to Alaska for fishing and hiking, bear viewing, all that stuff. He's done a lot of different things. In other words, he really knows the travel business inside and out. Get in touch with him, 3387 or send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. First-time clients will save $50 off their first book trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast. And we're brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, that's the place to go. Grenada Nissan is in Grenada, Mississippi. It's just off Interstate 55. I've done business with them for more than a decade. They're fantastic. You'll love them too. It's GrenadaNissanUSA.com.
Brett Norsworthy, kind enough to join us here on the podcast. Let's start with this. Matt Luke we're taping this on Wednesday, so Matt Luke did his tour on Tuesday. I thought he looked a lot more comfortable this time around. Not that media days matter, because it doesn't. Nobody ever says, yeah, you had a bad year, but our coach sure was impressive at media days. But he seemed a lot more comfortable sort of in his own skin yesterday, in my opinion.
Neil, he did, and he has. I even at the spring game at the Chucky Mullins banquet on Saturday, I thought Matt was very relaxed. And Matt is an engaging, fun guy. You know, Matt, the collegian, I remember, you remember, many remembers. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but time is marching on. Matt, the assistant coach, fun-loving and a nice esprit de corps, and got thrown into one of the biggest cauldrons ever, coming up almost 2 years to the date. And next week when that news broke and he had to step up, and Ross made the decision. Look, you're the head coach. That year was very disjointed. That trip to Cal and to Berkeley was. Matt, this week, much different than he was post-game late that night in Berkeley after that loss. And I think he has reason to be relaxed. I thought a sign of great inner strength, maturity, and even his own self-confidence in recognizing we got to make some changes. And it was obvious to fans. It was obvious to him. He saw everything we saw last year, and he stepped up with those coordinator hires, and he's letting them coach. Neil, I think that's smart. Instead of trying to be the only smart guy in the room, get all the smart guys in the room. And he got it with Rich Rodriguez and with Mike McIntyre, as everybody knows, two former as head coaches of the year. And it'll have to help on defense. It just can't get any worse. I mean, it just gets statistically, stylistically, schematically, any lead you can think of, historically, it cannot get any worse on defense. The last year, the rock bottom for me, and I have to hold it inside me during game time, but post game, blow a 10-point lead at home to South Carolina with their third-string tailback gashing us like he's Herschel Walker or Billy Sims. Jay Bentley, a really good player, but Will Muschamp, no offensive genius whatsoever. No. I mean, we'll just never be confused in the long or short list of offensive geniuses. Blow that lead, and it was really blown a little bit with Coach Longo's offense. We had 2 straight 3-and-outs that maybe chewed up a minute and a half. When your defense is over there just dying on the sideline, control the ball. So now I think Rich Rodriguez will try to do that. But Matt was at ease yesterday, and I think he's got a lot of reasons to be at ease. I love Matt. Loved him as a player, loved the family story, and want him to do really well. And he's going to have to. You can talk about it all you want in the hallways of the Winfrey Hotel, but Neil, they bring football helmets here. They're not a set of shoulder pads here. We do not play actual games at the Winfrey.
They're going to play an actual game August the 31st at the Liberty Bowl against Memphis. You've seen that team a lot. It's obvious for Ole Miss they've got to get off to a good start for a number of reasons. The winnable games are at the front of the schedule. They need some momentum as a program. They need the fans to buy back in. They need all of those things. And the only thing that produces that is winning. Can Ole Miss beat Memphis at the Liberty Bowl? What kind of a team are the Tigers going to be? Memphis
is going to be a really good team. My Arkansas friends, they're wanting to talk about week 2, and I'm going, wait a second. At Ole Miss, we can't think about week 2 until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock on Saturday, August 31st. In victory or defeat, really cannot dedicate any time at all to Arkansas. I know the GAs and people, cutting up tape and game plan, they do, but the staff and the players, the locker room, they sure can't. They got to be worried about the Memphis Tigers. Now, here's one thing I don't think a lot of people understand. Memphis has got a great program. Mike Norvell keeping it going from Justin Fuente when it had hit a bottom of all bottoms under Larry Porter. And you'll remember the first Justin Fuente game, they lost to UT Martin in his first game. So from that point on, what they've accomplished, and I've always kept up with Memphis. I've always liked Memphis because, I've lived there and have kept up with them through the years. I like this game. I like this game as the opener. I know I am in a distinct Ole Miss minority with liking the game anywhere, but especially liking it in the opener. This would probably be the last time it'll ever be the opener, and it could be the last time for a long time, anywhere, anytime, but a good program there. But this note, in the last 16 games, you think of the dynamic of the two programs, and it feels like everything they're doing is really right and cool and Kishi and going well. In their last 16 games, Memphis is 8-8. In Ole Miss's last 16 games, Ole Miss is 8-8. The defeated team that day will be 8-9 over the last 17, and the victor will be 9-8. And yes, Ole Miss can win that game. They are underdogs right now. Memphis is favored in every single game this year and going to be a really good team. I think they were picked to win the West in the AAC. I think they will. And there's a reason why they're favored. Their program right now is more solid than the Ole Miss program. It's had a longer route under Fuente and Norvell than at Ole Miss than we've had, really starting over in one of the most impossible leagues to start over in. Matt had to reboot everything and kind of had to reboot again with the coordinator hires. But opening day will be fun. They've got a solid quarterback in Brady White. They got a great running back in Patrick Taylor, a great wide receiver in DeMonte Coatsy. Now their problem has been defense. Their defense has been about as unwatchable as the Ole Miss defense the last few years. Remember last year when we were down at LSU getting ready to play on Saturday, they were in New Orleans on Friday night playing and really getting housed by Willie Fritz and Tulane. Material-wise, I think it'll be a fair fight. You only play 11 at a time. There's only 22 out there. It'll be a very fair fight. I think it'll be a fun day, and Ole Miss will have to play well. The story after opening day, I really think, will be, for good or for ill, this. Can you believe Matt Corral? For the good, then you know what the requisite numbers will be. For the bad, then it makes Arkansas week 2 really, really daunting. But on the rosier side, nothing sells tickets. Nothing sells tickets like winning. I don't care how mad people are. I don't care where they're seated and the sun and the cost. All those things are real, and they have to be addressed in the college sports world, and I think they are being addressed. But if you started with a win over Memphis and a win over Arkansas, then you have a respectable crowd for Southeast Louisiana. You start 0-2, it's going to be friends and family only.
A lot of Boy Scouts at that game.
Oh, and I remember when I was a little guy going to Boy Scout Day at Arkansas State, you wore your uniform, you could sit on the 50. You can sit on the 50 at Southeast Louisiana if it's a doomsday scenario. But if it's a more of a rosy 1-1, I hope and expect, and I think will happen, somewhere out of that first 4, Neal, be 3-1. If you're 4-0 going to Tuscaloosa, go to Tuscaloosa, house money, don't get anybody hurt, and reassemble the next week for Vanderbilt and Oxford, and the next week for Mizzou on the road in Columbia. And Ole Miss, we can kind of live again. We can kind of strut again and be happy again. It's been a long time since we've been happy. Really, in the afterglow of that win in New Orleans, my single favorite Ole Miss moment ever. Better than the Bama wins, better than any LSU win, just to see everybody so happy back at the hotel. We hadn't had many happy moments since that night, and it's time for some, and Coach Luke knows it, and the staff knows it, and I really believe, now every year I'm re-enthused at this time. I really believe some good times are ahead for Ole Miss, and I want them so bad. I want them for Matt and Ashley and the diehards, and then once again, get back to where we're playing in meaningful games.
You're familiar with the program I'm about to ask you about. Chad Morris just walked by. they struggled last year. He told them up front, hey, we're going to struggle. We're going to put in a new system, and it's not necessarily going to fit, and there's going to be some rough times, but we're building this thing. And like you said, it's a really tough division to build in. When you look at Arkansas, and Ole Miss, like you mentioned, is going to see them very early, what do you expect from the Razorbacks?
Well, I expect from Arkansas to be better, and quite simply, they're like the Ole Miss defense. They have to be. They won 2 games. Week 2 in Oxford, after they open against Portland State, if Arkansas wins, they will match their 2018 win total in 8 quarters of football
on September the 7th. Yeah.
In 2019. I mean, that would have to be a good feeling for them. Jeff Long and Brett Bielema did a number on them, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they really got them.
You really didn't see it happening until the end. At least I didn't. And you looked up and you're like, man, they've kind of wrecked the program.
A Razorback friend of mine said, all right, imagine hanging up your finest camel hair coat after you've worn it the last time in late February, and you put it up and you take it out every day to check to see if there's any moth damage, if there's any Swiss cheese damage. And there's not. Every time you pull it out, it's fine. But the first time you put it on that next winter, it looks like Swiss cheese. And that kind of happened to Arkansas. It was kind of methane gas running under the door. They didn't know they were dead until they were all conked out. And they got them good. The Jeff Long number he did on Arkansas also highlighted this. I knew they were going to be big to fill. They ended up being gigantic and maybe impossible to fill, and that was the shoes of Frank Broyles, the Bear Bryant of athletics directors. I've always said Robert Kayat was the Bear Bryant of chancellors, and Coach Broyles was the Bear Bryant of athletics directors. And Coach Broyles proved to be impossible to replace. And then Brett Bielema coming into the SEC, and really about the only team he could handle was Ole Miss, and that was in wild games. The game on September 7th will be wild at Oxford. September 7th. It'll be wild because it always is against Arkansas. I mean, some of those games, even last year in Little Rock, probably had no business winning that game. It felt over, mid-third quarter, and here comes the comeback. Of course, on the Arkansas side, the Hunter Henry heave in the most excruciating loss I've ever endured in sports. That was almost too brutal on the sports pain threshold that night in Oxford, just to have it won a couple of times. I felt for Marquise Haynes. I mean, he was making plays, and the celebration was on, but it was muted quickly with Alex Collins. It'll be a wild game, but somebody will emerge from that 1-0 in the SEC, and if it's Ole Miss again, I think you kind of live again and go on and have a good year.
Last thing, you talked about the Rosie scenario. I know listeners don't want to hear this, but it gets talked about all the time, and you've got a finger on the pulse of it. I get asked this all the time. How many does he have to win? How bad does it have to get for chaos? There's no chancellor right now. There's nobody really knows who the AD is going to be. If it went terribly bad, and I'm with you, I don't think it's going to, but if it did, what would happen?
Well, it would be starting over again, and it would be starting over really kind of 3 times in about 3 years, and that would be difficult. I don't think that will happen. I sure don't want it to happen. Ole Miss has endured a lot. Some of it self-inflicted. We can't dodge that. It was addressed, and it's a good time for the new administration. There will not be a permanent AD until there's a permanent chancellor. I think everybody recognizes that. And the first thing the new AD doesn't need to be doing is looking for a football coach. Set at men's basketball. I have prospects in women's basketball, baseball. There's some challenges there, but Mike Bianco, he's been able to fend everybody off over 19 years, and I think he will continue to. So what he needs, he or she that comes in as the new athletics director and the new chancellor, they don't need to be making wholesale changes in football unless they have to, and I don't think they will have to. And it would be so much fun to squeeze out a 6-6, a 7-5, and maybe even a Thanksgiving night win for sure over Mississippi State would buoy a lot of people. And Neal, go to a bowl game and treat it like we did in 2012 when we came down here to Birmingham. I brought my whole family to that. I swear I think it was the most fun my mother ever had at a bowl. She didn't know we weren't at the Rose Bowl, and she acted like we were. We had a blast. We were so hungry for one. And when you're at a bowl game, 16, 17, and 18, man, that's being in the Mojave of bowls. I mean, if you can't scratch out a bowl once in 4 years, you're really in bad shape, and I just don't want Ole Miss to be in that.
Brett, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tell you about Mastercuts Lawn and Landscape, premium lawn care throughout northern Mississippi, but they offer a lot more as well. They build custom playgrounds, retaining walls, pool decks, outdoor living spaces with paver patios, forestry mulching, and much more. You can find them online at gomastercuts.com or get a free quote with the phone number 662-607-7773. Again, that's gomastercuts.com.
We're also brought to you by Harry Alexander. Harry's an Oxford-based RE/MAX legacy realty agent, big part of Savannah Square, 9-acre development that's 0.7 of a mile from the Oxford downtown square. It's located east of North Lamar, a short stroll from the Midtown Shopping Center. You can check out the model home at 215 William Street. Then you can get in touch with Harry at 662-801-5621 at savannahsquareoxford.com. The Oxford Park Commission currently registering for youth flag football and the fall baseball season. Leagues are open for ages 6 to 12 in football and 6 to 15 in baseball. The cost to sign up for football is $50. It's just $40 for baseball. Each sport will be played at F&C Park. For more details, go to oxfordparkcommission.com. Podcast also brought to you by Oxford University Bank, OUB, locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. It's home to Kasasa, the absolute best cash checking account. They also have a commercial checking account now paying 1% interest on the account as long as you keep $10,000 in it. It comes with fully interactive online banking. To learn more, go to liveoxford.bankoxford.com or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured. Everyone loves their pets. No one loves stepping in their pet stuff, and certainly no one loves tracking that stuff back into the house. If you want to eliminate that problem, get in touch with Scoopers Pet Waste Removal, LLC. For $10 a cleaning, they'll clean up your yard. They'll do it on your schedule, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, or a one-time service. No contracts required. You can cancel at any time. If you have multiple dogs, it's $2 for each additional dog. It's scoopers.oxfordpetwaste@gmail.com or 662-506-2754. Scoopers Pet Waste Removal, they're number one and your pet's number two business. And we're brought to you by 7 South Tailgating. 7 South is the premier tailgating service provider at Ole Miss. They offer your standard tailgating services such as tent, table, and chair setup, breakdown, but they also offer so much more. They'll set up, break down, store your own personal gear. You can rent from them. They have cooler service, TV, satellite service, storage bins for supplies, decor, chandeliers, basically everything you could possibly imagine with tailgating. They've got it. Call or go online today for a detailed quote customized to your specific needs. 662-321-1682 or visit 7southtailgating.com.
Podcast also brought to you by G&M Pharmacy there on South Lamar and Oxford. They deliver local to your home or workplace in the Oxford area. They also offer MedSync, which means they fill your prescriptions the same day of the month, every single month, to make it easy on you. 662-236-2222 is the phone number, and while you're in there, if something you're interested in or want more information on, you can find out more about the sildenafil. It is the cheaper alternative to other brands. Rating as little as 15 minutes. You can break those pills into a half, into a quarter if needed. And you can even get discretion if that is required as well. You can just go to TysonDrugs.com or GandMPharmacy.com. Click Product Request and request a prescription right there online.
Joined by Josh Kendall, newly of The Athletic. Congratulations on becoming the latest in, I guess, about 1 million people in our business to now jump to The Athletic. So congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I think approximately 1 million is right. Happy to be there.
Take me through that decision, and then how much pressure was there on the "Here's why I joined The Athletic" column that everybody writes?
Well, The state was good to me. I've been there for 10 years, so it was not an easy decision. But the athletics, certainly, there are a lot of people who I respect who work there. I'm excited to be a part of that team. Yeah, when you, you do feel a lot of pressure with why I joined the athletic letter, but thankfully I joined the same day as Andy Staples, so nobody read my letter anyway. They all read Andy's letter.
There's probably some degree of truth to that, actually.
Let's be honest.
All right, let's talk about South Carolina for a minute, because I think they're one of the interesting teams in the league. Everyone's talking about Missouri. That's the sexy team in the East, and it's a given that Georgia's the favorite. Where does South Carolina fall in terms of pecking order, in your opinion, going into this year?
I don't know. That's the honest answer. I think they deserve more credit than they probably will get. I think that they've got a shot to be second in the division. I think that they're a good, solid football team. I think they're an improved football team. But they play a brutal schedule. They play Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia. They play a Florida and a Texas A&M team that'll both be favored, I would imagine. That's right off the top. So they could be a pretty good football team. They could be a good football team and finish 6-6, honestly. So that's not going to do you any good in the division standings. That's not going to do you any good on the message boards. But I think that they will be competitive. If they could beat an Alabama or Clemson or a Georgia, and that's a big if, but if they could do that, I think that just that gives them a lot of momentum going into 2020. They won't/can't compete with Georgia. They're just not there from an overall roster standpoint, but potentially they could finish second in this division.
What makes that job so hard right now? Is it the fact that Georgia's an elite program, or is it the fact that Clemson's right there in the state dominating headlines and winning national titles and with a Heisman Trophy candidate and all of that stuff?
It's the fact that you're stuck dead between those two programs, literally and figuratively. That is Clemson is their longest and most hated rival. Georgia is their second most hated rival, and those two programs are on virtually unprecedented runs. It is a very difficult situation for a program like South Carolina that just doesn't have the tradition to call back on to compete, especially when Clemson and Georgia are doing what they're doing. Right now, Carolina's just got to hold on and weather the storm.
From the outside looking in, I think Will's doing a good job. It appears that he has some momentum on the recruiting trail. Is there among, and I always hate asking people to speak for fan bases because I hate when people ask me to speak for a fan base because I don't know, but just kind of judging it from, in your perspective, 1,000 feet, are the fans willing to give him some time, or is there some growing angst?
The angst will start to grow in the fall when Alabama beats them by a couple of touchdowns, and then Georgia. So those gaps are still so large. Right now, fans can say, I know we've got a tough schedule. I see all the building that he's done. But when reality sets in the fall and they get thumped a couple of times, people will start squawking.
When the emotion kicks in.
And so this is I'll be interested to see how the fan base feels going into 2020. Will's job is certainly safe from an administrative standpoint, through the 2020 season. But this is the year that if they, that fans could start to turn and, at least from their mind, put him on the hot seat going into 2020.
If Jake Bentley played at Georgia or Clemson or one of those places, would he be a national name?
I don't know. I think that Jake, I find myself in Columbia having to defend Jake Bentley a lot because there is a fairly substantial group of South Carolina fans that think he's no good, which is absurd. He's going to end up as one of the 10 guys in history to throw for 10,000 yards in this league. He is a good to very good quarterback.
Not to interrupt you, I watched him pull a game out of the fire for South Carolina last year. I thought middle of the third quarter last year in Oxford that the Gamecocks were beat. Yeah. And Bentley's the reason they won the game.
Right. He is a good to very good SEC quarterback. His problems are twofold. Number one, this is very legitimate, he turns the ball over too much. His interceptions have to go down. But number two, he was good to very good as a true freshman. He walked in the door and started those 6 games as a true freshman and was great. And so people naturally then extrapolate from there. Well, if he's this good now, he's going to be a Heisman Trophy winner as a sophomore, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that hasn't happened. He's still and I use this word carefully, he's still just a very good quarterback. But they expected, I think, something more. So now they've started to turn against him. Will Muschamp loves him. Ryan Helinski's not going to beat him out for the job. I don't think. I will be floored if that happens, as good as Ryan Helinski is. So I think that Jake Bentley is, just from a South Carolina perspective, going to be one of those guys that they really appreciate when he's gone.
What about Helinski? How big of a recruiting win was that for Muschamp? What kind of a chance does that give them from a momentum standpoint building forward?
I think huge. They got Helinski. They also got Zach Pickens, who was the defensive lineman, who was their first 5-star under Will. So those two guys definitely give them some recruiting momentum. And everybody who's seen Helinski, who knows what they're talking about, says he's really good. I'm a skeptic. Not a skeptic. I'm just a see it as believe it guy. So let's see him. He played in a very difficult division in California high school and got his brains beat in a lot. So did that, I don't know what to make of that. Does that mean he's ready for that type of competition? Does that mean he learned something? Does that mean he's still going to get the SEC and not going to be ready? I don't know. But people who know more about the game than me say he's really good.
You got a pretty good quarterback mentor and got to work with in Dan Werner. What is the feeling in Columbia about maybe the job that he's done there? I know that he's a guy that at one point a lot of Ole Miss people thought maybe he would come back to Ole Miss before Matt hired Rich Rodriguez.
Well, I think that Dan has done a good job, and I think that the fan base feels like Dan has done a good job. I think that there was at one point in Will's hiring/promoting process, I think there was a possibility that Dan Werner was their offensive coordinator. He decided to bump Brian McClendon up, probably is an effort to keep Brian for longer term and let Dan be the experienced guy in Brian's ear. And I think Dan has done a good job in that role, and that's helped South Carolina. I think that Dan's work with Jake Bentley will be judged. Dan and Jake Bentley will be judged this year on how many interceptions Jake Bentley throws. Fair or not, that's sort of the point that everybody's hammered home in the summer is his interceptions have got to go down. If they don't, people will squawk at the quarterback's coach because that's what people do.
All right, break down the SECs for me. Who wins? Who's the disappointment? Who's the surprise?
Georgia wins. The people there seem to be some people who think Tennessee's going to be decent. I don't know what they're looking at. I think Tennessee is still going to be terrible. I think Vandy is at the bottom, and I think everybody else kind of shake them up. I think Florida, of the shake it up group, Florida is probably the best team in that group, but they're going to have to go out and prove it. I think that South Carolina had that Florida team beat last year and then gave them that game. If Florida doesn't stage a dramatic and fairly improbable comeback in that game last year, I think people think differently right now about both Florida and South Carolina. So I think that there's, between Missouri, Florida, South Carolina, there's just a lot of, we'll see, in the middle of the division.
Is this the year Georgia gets over the hump against Alabama, or is it Alabama's conference again?
Alabama. I mean, until Georgia puts a stake in them, you've got to, for my money, you've got to pick Alabama.
Josh, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Yep. Olin Buchanan with Texags here. We'll start with this. Ross Bjork, the new athletics director at A&M. What's kind of the general thought over there when he got hired, and what have people thought of him so far?
I think that they've welcomed him, and they're really I don't want to overuse the word excited, but there's a feeling that they like him. They like what they've seen so far and heard so far. He seems like a very nice guy. Of course, everybody is at first.
Yeah.
But the what do you call it? The first impression has been all positive.
He walks into a pretty interesting place. Buzz Williams, the new basketball coach there, is highly thought of. And then, of course, A&M has given Jimbo Fisher everything he could possibly want, money and otherwise, with the expectation that he will win really big there. It's year 2. I don't think anybody's expecting a national title this year, but what are sort of the expectations going into this year, and what's realistic?
Well, I think realistic is anywhere from 7 to 10 wins. I think A&M's going to be a lot like A&M was last year, a dangerous team that's capable of upsetting some of the really powerful teams on the schedule. And but if they're not on one day, very, very susceptible to being upset themselves. So, I go back to last year, looked like they had the game against Auburn put away and let it go. And then they
had a hell of a shot against Clemson.
Had a hell of a shot against Clemson. Had a heck of a shot against Mississippi State, if you remember.
Yeah.
And then, did upset LSU in that marathon. So I think it's going to be very similar to that. A team with a lot of possibilities, but there's still enough questions that there's probably going to be some times they're going to trip along the way.
I know you follow their recruiting closely. From a distance, it looks like he's bringing in the kind of talent at A&M that he got at Florida State, at LSU when he was there. That he's kind of building a power class by class. You see it the same way?
Well, he's certainly trying, and what's really different is that he's going all over the country. Previous A&M coaches, of course, they would concentrate on Texas and Louisiana, and every now and then run out to California for one or two guys over a decade. But, they're bringing in guys from Tennessee, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., California. So he's trying to take the brand national. And, Jimbo Fisher has a reputation of being a strong recruiter. And last year, depending on which recruiting service you believe, they had as high as the number 3 recruiting class in the country. Right now, I think they're ranked 11th or 12th, but they still got a lot of work to do. So it looks like they're going to, again, if you believe the services, are going to put together at least 2 really strong back-to-back classes.
Well, I think we all know that Rivals is the greatest service, right? I mean, I'm kidding. So look on the field. Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses when you look at this team? I mean, if they get to the 10-win mark, what happened? If they end up with only 7 wins, what happened?
Well, I think that if they get to the 10-win mark, that means Kellen Mond took the leap forward that we all expected to make in his second year in Jimbo Fisher's system. And it means that they avoided injuries at linebacker and that they got a lot better in the secondary, because last year the secondary was just atrocious. If they are around 7 wins, then, Kellen was probably about the same as last year, and they didn't make much improvement in the secondary, because the secondary was without a doubt the weakest link. You probably saw the game against Mississippi State. I think they gave up 3 touchdowns on 3rd and long. And A&M gave up more long passes of 10 yards more, I think, than anybody in the SEC last year. So the secondary was a big problem. And I think they're going to have a better pass rush to help with that. They brought in a junior college guy, supposed to be the best junior college cornerback in the country, and he'll help. A guy that they've thought a lot of for the last 2 years, Clifford Chapman, but he hadn't played in 2 years because of ineligibility and injury. And then Leon O'Neal played. He was a freshman last year. He got in and played at safety in the Gator Bowl and had a real strong game. So there's some reasons to be cautiously optimistic that they can make a lot of improvement in the secondary. But, of course, they got to show they can do it over a consistent basis.
What's your take on the West as a whole? Obviously it's a division that has Alabama in it, and the LSU's in it, and Auburn. I mean, some good teams, and then no one really knows about Mississippi State, and I think most people think Ole Miss and Arkansas are going to struggle to win. How do you see the division?
Yeah, I think Alabama's going to win the national championship. And
I do too.
In my opinion, it's going to be A&M and LSU battling for that second spot. I would assume Auburn's probably going to be 4th because of I might put them higher, but when you're looking at a freshman quarterback, you just don't know what to expect. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. And then I would think that Ole Miss, Mississippi State, because of all they lost on defense, and then Arkansas. I think those 3 you could kind of mix them up and pick them out, and they could finish anyway. But I would say those 3 are going to be somewhere in 4, 5, and 6, and Alabama's going to be 1, and we'll guess on the others.
Tom Herman was asked today about the A&M Texas deal. And he says, "Yeah, I want to play." Jimbo's going to get asked that today, so by the time people hear this, it probably will have already given his answer. What do you anticipate his answer to be?
He'll say that we're going to do whatever's best for Texas A&M. And I know that if you talk to and he's going to say, look, our schedule's booked for 10 years out, which it is. They're going to be playing Miami. They got Colorado coming up. They got Notre Dame on the schedule. I think they have Oregon. So they're going to feel like they don't need to do anything as a reaction to what Texas wants them to do. A&M was one of for its whole history was kind of its direction was set by Texas, and since that break and moving to the SEC, what a lot of people don't understand is that it was Texas that actually ended the series. A&M still wanted to play when they moved to the SEC. Texas said, no, we're going to end the series, and then even the athletic director at the time even encouraged the other Big 12 teams not to schedule A&M in anything. That's not an opinion. That's been reported. And so A&M now feels like, we don't need to play Texas just because Texas wants us to play.
It's gone much better for A&M in the SEC than Texas thought it would. Is that safe to say? Texas thought that A&M would kind of be an ugly thumb in the league, and then it hasn't worked out that way. That's always been kind of my perception from over in Mississippi.
Yeah, I think they thought it would be, A&M would go over and finish sixth in the West every year, and there's been a year when they have, but I don't think that they ever thought A&M would be as competitive as they are. They started out finishing, with that Johnny Manziel year, having a good year, and last year was second. So, they've been reasonably competitive. The folks over at Austin like to say, yeah, but you haven't won a championship since you've gone into the SEC. And
that's a certain team in Tuscaloosa that's had something to say about that.
Well, the Aggies, their response is, well, you know what? You haven't won a championship since A&M moved to the SEC either.
So you're in Texas. I'm curious because Bob Bowlesby got asked about it. He gave the dismissive answer that the Big 12 continuously gives about, no, we're not. No one's looking at anything. Everything's good. That grant of rights is going to expire. The TV deal has to be renegotiated. When it does, what's your anticipation for what happens to what's left of the Big 12?
I think the Big 12 can be a viable conference as long as Oklahoma and Texas are strong. Remember the old Big East when they had Miami and Virginia Tech? It was still a viable conference because those two teams were good. And now that Texas is getting competitive again, as long as Texas and Oklahoma want the Big 12 to survive, I think it will. But, with the money's out there and there's always the Pac-12 possibility out there. Texas even reportedly has talked to the Big Ten before.
Yeah.
Even the ACC, I think, one time it came up. So I would, we all know in college sports not to say anything's impossible and can't happen. But I would suspect that Texas and Oklahoma want to remain in a conference that they're in charge of.
Olin, thanks for the time.
You bet. Thanks for having me.